Hello and a very warm welcome to another edition of Talking Germany, the show where we do just that. And my guest today is a man who was, until not too long ago, one of Germany's top diplomats. Today, he is the head of one of the most interesting academic projects in the country. And here he is, in person, Gunter Pleuger. Thank you very much for joining us here on Talking Germany today. It's a great pleasure for me.
Great pleasure for me to be with you.
Great stuff. Now, Gunter Pleuger had a long and distinguished career as a diplomat, culminating in his stint as Germany's ambassador to the United Nations in New York. In recent years, he's been the president of the Viadrina, a European university that is flourishing by straddling the border between Germany and Poland in the city of Frankfurt on the Oder, which is just about an hour's drive east of Berlin. Now, Gunter Pleuger is above all a man of words. I think he'll permit me for saying so. So it's going to be very interesting to hear what he has to say about the following topics. Global networker Gunter Pleuger uses all the contacts he built up during his diplomatic career to boost the profile of the transnational university that he now heads. European Community find out all about what they call an international self-administered student centre that has been established by students at the Viadrina University. And precious heritage, we visit the Baltic seaport of Wismar. It's not just very pretty and resurgent in recent years, but it's also the hometown of our guest. Welcome once again, Gunter Pleuger. Now, I read in a newspaper article that I was reading about you, a description of you that describes you as a restless spirit. Is that a fair description?
Well, I don't know, but let me put it this way. When I'm interested in something, I try to achieve it.
You're an enthusiast.
Yes.
An enthusiast for diplomacy above anything else.
Well, I wouldn't say I certainly was an enthusiast of diplomacy, but I'm enthusiastic also with regard to other tasks. It must be fascinating, there must be a chance of success, and there must be a possibility to work successfully with other people.
And does this explain why, a couple of years ago, I mean, you retired as a diplomat, and 4 years ago you got this offer from the Viadrina University to become the president of the university. Is that the reason behind it, that you wanted to be making a contribution, developing a new enthusiasm?
In a way, yes. And that was strengthened by the conviction that this university is in some ways a follow-up to my previous professional life. Because this university, the Europa University Viadrina, is the most international university in all of Germany. There is no other university that has a larger percentage of foreign students. We have contacts with more than 200 universities worldwide, working contacts, and we have a large community of international students. Every 4 students at my university is a foreign student. And then, you know, this university was founded in 1506, and then in 1811, when the Prussians founded the big university in Berlin, they moved the Viadrina from Frankfurt Oder to Breslau. And for 180 years, Frankfurt had no university. And when it was refounded after the reunification of Germany and the reunification of Europe, the idea was that we want to have this little university at the border between Germany and Poland with a view in 2 directions. The first view is to Europe and the integration of the European Union, and that's why we are called Europe University. And then we have a sort of bridging function towards Poland and Eastern Europe. And we are supposed to be an international and interdisciplinary university. That means that we have to develop modern structures of teaching and research, and that's what we have done over the past 20 years.
And just give me a very quick word on whether the kind of skills that you need to be a diplomat, are they the same kind of skills that you need to be the president of a university, or are they 2 very different worlds?
No, even more so.
Even more so? More diplomacy?
It's exactly, you know. I mean, in the diplomatic work, you work in a system of hierarchy, right? A ministry is a system of hierarchy. Not so the university, because you cannot give any orders to professors, because we have in the Constitution of Germany a paragraph which says that we have the freedom of research and teaching. And so if you tell a professor, please do this or that, he will say...
He might say no.
He might say no. And so you are much more dependent on convincing people who you cannot give orders to. And that sometimes is a little bit more difficult than running a big ministry.
Gunter Pleuger and I were sitting here chuckling a little bit while the Italian ambassador was making those comments back in 2005, I think it was, yeah? And I said to you, you looked a little bit ruffled, and you were saying, no,
I was not ruffled because...
Yeah, but listen, your tie was all undone and you looked a bit harassed.
Well, that was à la mode in New York. No, but you see, first of all, what was then called the Coffee Club, run by the Italians, who were against the reform of the Security Council, has never really ruffled or worried us because the Coffee Club never had more than 12 to 15 votes. And so there were no danger to our endeavors. And the second point is I was rather amused because as a colleague, I knew what kind of procedural trick he was using, you know. In the multilateral field, where decisions are being taken by majority vote, you have a possibility to prevent a vote against you when you are in a minority by creating an atmosphere that is so bad that everybody says, oh, my goodness, let's postpone the vote. And that is exactly what he tried, you know, but unsuccessfully. So I was not ruffled. I was amused. OK,
let's talk. We'll talk in just a minute about Germany's endeavours, as you're calling them, to get a permanent seat on the UN Security Council. Let's just go back a little bit to your time when you were actually chairing the UN Security Council as Germany's ambassador then. What's it like to sit at the top table of diplomacy and to be in the spotlight of global attention?
Well, when you sit in the spotlight of global attention, all decisions have been made already, and you sit there quite relaxed. Because the Security Council works in a way that it meets in a small consultation chamber every day, sometimes 7 days a week, depending on whether you have a crisis or not. And that is where all the decisions are prepared. And by the time the Security Council moves to the Security Council chamber, where you have the attention of viewers of all TV stations, there all the decisions have been taken already. OK,
but there are occasions when decisions haven't been made already, like that occasion in 2003 when the US Defence Secretary, we saw it on that footage, Colin Powell made that address laying out the US case for Iraq, having weapons of mass destruction, preparing to build weapons of mass destruction and so on. What were you, not as an ambassador, as an ordinary guy, what were you thinking during that address? I can remember what I was thinking.
Yeah, well, you know, I think everybody in the room at this famous meeting of the Security Council, and Colin Powell, who was respected by all his colleagues, made a speech of which everybody in the room knew that the facts were wrong. And in a way, of course, that was a sort of distressing atmosphere there, because we all knew that the decision to go to war had been taken already. And because with these kind of preparation that the Americans had done, they could not withdraw without losing face completely. And as we know now, of course, the decision had been taken, although President Bush denied that at that time. The second point was that we knew that hundreds of thousands of people would be killed in that kind of a war. And the question was, what for? And as the reasoning for waging that war was wrong, and we knew it, it was a situation, you know, that made you, well, somehow distressed. And but on the other hand, it was a little bit like I described it before. The decision in the Security Council had been prepared before, because we had in the consultation chambers a voting situation of 11 members against the war and 4 members in favor. And that coalition has held until the beginning of the war. And it was quite clear that the Security Council would not legitimize this war by a majority vote.
You're talking again about the Security Council. There are 5 permanent members, of course. We all know who they are. Germany would like to join that top table. Well, why? Why?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't say Germany would like to join. I've always said, also openly in the Security Council and in the General Assembly, look, the German Republic has flourished 50 years without being member or permanent member of the Council, and that will continue like that. We think that a reform of the Council, and not only of the membership, but also of the rules of procedure, is necessary to increase the legitimacy and the capability to act for the Security Council. So it's in the interest of the United Nations, not so much in our national interest, that this reform takes place. And another thing...
But one second, that's diplomatic talk, isn't it? What you're saying is yes. You said yes there. You said Germany does want to get a permanent seat.
No, we have formulated it differently. We have said, if the international community wants us to take over more responsibility in the Security Council, we are prepared to do it. Mm-hmm. And the proposal for this did not come from Germany. Mm-hmm. I was in Washington on post as political head of the political department when Baker asked the ambassador and me to come to the State Department and to consult on the response to the Italian resolution in the General Assembly asking for a reform of the Security Council. That was in 1991. So we have not started this reform process, but it was started by the Indians. And the Americans said, and I think that is still true, we Americans will propose Japan and you as new permanent members. Why? First, because it is impossible in the long run that the second and the third largest contributor of resources to the United Nations has no say in the decision-making process. Secondly, we, the Americans, are paid a much too large share of the cost, and you can alleviate this burden for us Americans. And third, if Japan or Germany join the Security Council, the faction of Western states will be strengthened, and therefore our policy position in the Security Council will be strengthened. And I think that is still true, although George Bush saw it differently.
OK. I've got to ask you one more question on this subject. You know as well as I do that if Germany does take on this additional responsibility, what it also means is that Germany, and this is what other powers tell Germany, it would mean that they would have to take the serious responsibility of facing up to conflict situations, of possibly having to go to war. And people say to Germany, you're not prepared to take that last recourse.
But this question has long been cleared in Germany. First of all, until 1994, there was communis opinio in the political class that under our constitution we could not go to war except for the defense of NATO lines. But in 1994, the Constitutional Court in Germany said, no, Germany can take over different and further responsibility in company with other states to take military action if necessary to preserve the international peace and or to end the war. And we have done that many times. We went to war in Kosovo. We were, for a long time, the second or third largest contributor of troops to Afghanistan. And the German government, when it participated in Afghanistan, took a great risk, and Chancellor Schröder won the vote of confidence only by 1 vote. So there is no question that the Germans would take over that responsibility.
Gunter Pleuger, you were telling me about how one aspect of the vision of the Viadrina University is for Germany to be opening its arms towards the East, the countries of the East, and not just Poland. Give me a sense of how you go about doing that at the university.
Well, first of all, we have to realize that this university has the largest percentage of foreign students of any German university. Every 4th student at our university is foreign. The largest groups are the Poles, the Eastern Europeans, then come the French, then the Turks. We have students from 82 countries from all over the world. Now, how do we achieve the internationality of this university beyond Poland and Eastern Europe? First of all, we have more than 200 cooperation treaties with universities from South America to Eastern Asia, and all of these are active. The intensity of cooperation is different, of course, depending on the subject matter we are cooperating on. But therefore, we are really a very international university. Then we have cooperation within the Weimar Triangle between France, Germany, and Poland. And that means we have this cooperation between the University Sorbonne in Paris and the Adam Mickiewicz University in Posen and the Viadrina. And with the Adam Mickiewicz University, we have something that is also unique, I think, in Europe. We have a joint venture, the Collegium Polonicum, on the other side of the Oder River, and we offer there courses that are particularly geared to Eastern Europe and especially also to Poland. For example, German-Polish law, international business administration, where people get a German and a Polish degree afterwards. But in addition, we have started a number of initiatives. For example, we have a trialogue going on between Germany, Poland, and Russia by the universities Viadrina, Torun, and Kaliningrad. We are participating in the Eastern cooperation of the European Commission that includes countries like Belarus, Ukraine, Georgia, and Armenia and
Azerbaijan?
And Azerbaijan, right, sorry. And we are also cooperating in what we call a Oder partnership with 4 of the German federal states and the Woivodschaften on the eastern side.
The counties.
So we have a great international network that we use to fulfill our task to be an international university.
Well, that's a great project. And you know it, yeah? You're aware of it, yeah?
Yes, of course.
How typical is it?
Well, it's very typical for our university. It's part of our profile. You know, I don't know any other university of 6,500 students that has more students' initiatives than our university has. We have 43. And whatever your interests are, you will find a group of people where you can share this interest. And one of them has been to create an international students' house, a campus house. And the students, not the university, the students all by themselves went to the city mayor and said, well, you have this old building there that you want to tear down, but you don't have an investor to build it up again. So why not give it to us for €1 per year for rent? And we will remake it and do it all by ourselves and make it an international student house.
OK, and it's a great project. We saw it's very lively and there's a lot of good communication going on there. Yeah. But the young guy at the beginning of the report, he said that there is a problem. He said that at your university, the students tend to be scattered very broadly, not just across the city, because you've got a lot of students who live in Poland, you've got a lot of students who live in Berlin.
Well, that is normal and that is not really a problem. First of all, we have in Frankfurt 1,600 students' apartments that belong to the university. In Subice, on the other side of the Oder River, the Collegium Polonicum, our joint venture with the Posen University, they have another 1,100 apartments. So half of our students can live in apartments that are absolutely excellent, even with heating, with warm water, and with internet connection and so on. And so our students live on the Polish side and on the German side of the Viadrina. And then, of course, about half of our students and professors, by the way, live in Berlin because it's close by.
And how well do the Polish and the Polish and the German students mix? I mean, the Polish students, they learn German, don't they? But the German students, do they learn Polish?
Yes, not enough, certainly. And the language problem is still a problem. We have tried to solve that. Well, we can't solve it, of course. But in the last few years, more Germans have learned Polish, especially because we offer these joint courses like German-Polish law. There you have to to learn German or Polish, or you have to learn both languages.
Okay.
Then another course is International Business Administration, where you get 2 diplomas at the end. And as this is very attractive for young people who are then recruited immediately by the economy and by companies, there is more willingness to learn the language of the neighbor. And one of the advantages that we have is that we have one of the biggest and best equipped language centers of all German university. Mm-hmm. I think you can learn about 15 different languages there. Yeah. And another thing is, if you come to the Viadrina and you don't know German, you don't know Polish, you can have tuition in English or in French or in Polish for 4 semesters, mm-hmm. and then you are supposed to have language studies in parallel. So after 4 semesters, you have to be able to listen in German and in Polish.
It sounds great. It's a very rosy picture of the Viadrina University. We're going to talk about you a little bit.
It's not rosy, it's realistic.
It's realistic, sir. OK, Gunter Pleuger himself. We're going to talk about where he comes from, because if you go about 200 metres north of Berlin, you hit the Baltic coast, then you head west and you'll come to the port of Wismar, which is where our guest was born. To give you a feel for the place, we've got some footage now that we can show you. And while we're looking at it, perhaps Gunter Pleuger can tell us exactly what we're seeing.
Well, there you see the marketplace, the most beautiful part of this more than 1,000-year-old city. And this is the mayor's office. This is what is called the Wasserkunst. That was a central water supply system erected already in the 14th century. And this is the Alte Schwede, that's the oldest building at the marketplace, a Gothic building.
That red brick Gothic, which is very lovely.
Gothic. Yeah. And around the marketplace, as you can see, you have architecture from 6 centuries. And then, of course, Wismar has 3 big churches and a number of smaller ones. But the big 3 cathedrals were built because Wismar was a very rich Hanse city in the medieval. And in the 14th century, they built 3 cathedrals, although they have never been the seat of a bishop. But they wanted to compete with Lübeck, the larger Hansestadt. Okay. And they were very rich because they had, in a city of about 3,000 inhabitants, they had 200 breweries, and they supplied the whole area of the Baltic Sea with beer. And they made a lot of money with that, so they could afford to build 3 cathedrals.
200 breweries in Wismar. Yeah?
Yes. And now, of course, you know, these breweries were stopped practically after the 30 Years' War, when the Swedes took over the city. And for
religion.
Pardon?
Religion.
No, not for religious, for power reasons.
OK. Let's leap forward from the 30 Years' War to the... You were born in 1941.
Yes.
Yeah. Wismar was very badly damaged, hit, by bombing raids in the Second World War.
Yeah, not so badly as others.
What can you remember?
Yes, I can remember.
Tell me.
I remember not very much because I was, during the war, I was born in 41, so I was 3, for example, when our house was bombed. And we were all sitting in the basement. The whole thing started shaking and burning. But the main impression I got out of that is that it was a wonderful fireworks and I didn't have to go to bed.
Well, that's a very sanguine way to deal with a bombing raid. Something more difficult. Your father was the mayor of Wismar from 1933 to the end of the Second World War. That means he was the Nazi mayor of Wismar. Tell me more about that chapter in your family history.
Well, you see, my father was mayor or became mayor in 1933 when the city consisted practically only of communists and Nazis. There was no choice between... because Wismar at that time was a city with the largest amount of unemployed people and in a bad shape. And so he managed during the Nazi time to rebuild the economy of the city. But the main thing was that in the end, he remained in Wismar at the end of the war. And he went with a white flag out of the city to tell the British troops who were coming from the west, we are not defending the city. And so they put him on a jeep with his white flag and drove into the city not a shot was fired, and the city, and I think lots of people's life have been saved by that, and the city, of course, was safe because had there been one shot, then the British had bombed, and that is the thing. And the British made him afterwards not only mayor but also Regierungspräsident. So he was also responsible
for the whole area. But he was a card-carrying member of the Nazi Party.
Yes,
that's a problem.
Well, of course it was a problem, and I have discussed this with my father later on. I mean, when I left Wismar, I was 4. But we have talked about all this very intensely. Yeah, and
that's quite unusual. There are many people from that generation who just shut down and said, I'm not going to talk about that.
No. And of course, you know, I mean, my father was a person whose life's work was destroyed by the Nazis and by the war, you know. And he has realized that. And we have talked about this. And it was a tragedy which you could not change anymore, but he realized what kind of tragedy that was.
Just a very short answer. Was all this that happened in your childhood one of the reasons why you became a diplomat eventually?
No, this has nothing to do with that.
Okay. Let's stick with you personally. You've got a pilot's license, yeah?
Yeah.
How long have you had that for?
Well, I got a pilot's license in 1985.
Okay, and you've still got it?
Pardon?
You've still got it?
Yes.
Okay, we'll talk more specifically in just a second about your pilot's licence. Before we do that, we're going to visit a flying school in a small place called Cuxhaven. It's right on Germany's western border, and a man there called Hubert Hupkens teaches would-be pilots what they need to know before they take to the skies.
For Hubert Hupkens, there's no better place to be than up in the air in an ultralight aircraft. This one weighs just 280 kilos. As an instructor, he's keen to pass on his enthusiasm to his students.
This is how aviation began. Just look at this.
It's a small, lightweight hang glider. The motor has been taken from a chainsaw. But when he teaches, Hupkens opts for his C-42. If the weather's right, his student Ralf Steinweg can take it for a spin today.
At 1,000 feet, throttle the engine, circle and land. I'll show you, and then you can do it yourself.
It doesn't sound easy.
We'll manage.
If someone thinks he can fly on his own after 3 lessons, I do put on the brakes. If he doesn't change, you have to give the student a talking to.
But that's not necessary with Ralf Steinweg.
I want to fly safely, and I want my passengers to feel relaxed. And I want to live a long life.
So I'll sit back and you take over. Not so fast. Lift the nose higher, much higher.
Steinweg's first challenge is to land safely and in the right place.
Glide to the side and down we go.
It's a bit bumpy, but Steinweg manages the landing. No sooner are they on the ground than they're off again.
It's not about giving the student a hard time. You have to practice certain things so he can react appropriately.
Now Steinweg will be allowed to fly on his own for the first time after 10 lessons. A student's first solo flight is always a big moment for Hubert Hupkens.
I'm a little nervous, but also proud that one of my students can now fly by himself.
It's very impressive to be flying up here on my own, but there's also plenty to keep me busy.
They have to become independent eventually. The aim is to fly alone, so we have to start somewhere.
To gain an ultralight pilot's license in Germany, a student needs at least 30 flying hours and about 5,500 euros. The landing goes well. Ralf Steinweg's first solo flight was an all-round success.
Perhaps you could explain, tell us about what licence you've got and tell me about the differences between ultralight, microlight, light aircraft licences. Are they all the same thing or is there a difference?
No, they are different. And I have a PPLA, private pilot's license.
Okay.
And I fly not ultralights, but normal small airplanes, single engine land, and normally Cessnas or Pipers.
When was the last time you were up in the air?
Oh, quite a while ago.
Quite a while ago,
yes.
Yeah. But you still have the license.
Because I have too many things to do at the university, and therefore, in the last 2 years, it was very hard to find time to fly because it takes a lot of time. You have to go to the airport, and to fly around for, let us say, 2 or 3 hours, it takes you a whole day with going to the airport, taking care of the engine, and so on. You
just said, while we were watching that report, you said flying is easier than driving.
Yes.
I found that very hard to believe. I'd be terrified.
Well, you know, a modern single-engine airplane is equipped with so many electronic devices that if you want to, you have automatic control in practically everything. And you can just relax, and with GPS, of course, you just put in your flight schedule and the rest is done by the airplane.
But you have to take off?
Yes.
And you have to land.
Exactly.
They're the scary bits.
Yeah. Taking off is easy because you only have to check that you have the right speed to take off. And, well, it's more dangerous than landing because if something happens with full throttle, the engine going full throttle, that's very often fatal. But the more difficult thing is to land in an elegant way without bumping around on the runway.
Don't you ever, when you've been up in a plane on your own, totally on your own?
Yes, I am.
Because I come from the generation when you're driving along in a car, I can remember cars just going and stopping. Are you not frightened of that happening when you're up in a plane?
No, it never happened to me. I mean, I've been flying for 25 years, and of course you take exercise for that. You know, if the engine stops and you fly normally, let's say at 5,000 feet, then you have about 15 minutes time to look for a field where you can land and try to restart the engine.
And you glide down?
You glide down.
OK. Let's glide down to the end of the show.
And you exercise that all the time when you get your license. And you have to do every 2 years, you have a biannual exam. And one theoretical and one practical. And all these things like landing, taking off, stalls, you have to do. OK. We're going to land with the show now. We're going to glide down to the landing with our quiz. Oh, I can hear the music. Right, you're the diplomat. I'm going to ask you one question, the big one for a diplomat. Is Germany a global leader or a global follower? Well, I think Germany is not a global leader and also not a global follower, but tries to take on global responsibility whenever it's necessary. Gunter Pleuger has the last word on the show. Diplomat, university president, a great guest. If you've enjoyed his company as much as I have, then do come back next week. Until then, bye-bye and tschüss.